rounding decimals. Now, the reason I chose to do this lesson as a practice lesson is because I looked at your tests, your pre-tests, and a lot of us got this first question wrong. And rounding is a really important thing because my book doesn't go over it because it assumes you already know how to do it, because it thinks you learned it in 5th grade, 4th grade, and it thinks you're an expert on it, so it doesn't have another lesson on it. So after I saw your pre-test, I decided I probably need to go over this again. It's really important because I require you to round, Mrs. Harpnell requires you to round, Mr. Kneisel requires you to round, so if we can make sure we know how to do that, you won't have a problem the whole year, okay? So when I show you a slide, so all my presentations, when I teach, I have slides up here, and I have a pre-made, so I don't have to take time to write problems on the board. So I suggest when you take notes that you write everything down that you need to, because think of this, if you look back at your notebook in November or next January when we have tests, are you going to be able to look back at your notes and remember what we did for today? So you have to think about that. Do I need to write this down? Am I going to remember this? Even if you kind of remember it, you might still want to write it down. Or even if you kind of know it, you might still want to write it down. Now, you can keep your notebook how many different ways. Like, I have a lot of students who do, like, vocab in green, and their practice problem is in pencil. Or they highlight different things, they highlight different words, they do different things throughout the notebook. So you can use color if you want. Like, if you want to use a pen to take your note, I don't care. Use a pen. But all your work is done in pencil. So you decide what you want to do for your notebook. Sound like a plan? Okay. So here's my first slide. So when we talk about decimals, it's really important to know the place values of decimals. Now, you are all pretty familiar with the numbers in front of a decimal, right? Like the place value, the ones, the tens, the hundreds. You guys are pretty familiar with that. You're not so much familiar with the place values that come after a decimal, okay? The difference, the one huge difference about these is, notice that this side doesn't have a ones. Do you see that? Like this side has a ones, and then you get tens, hundreds, thousands. What other difference do you see up here between these two things? Yes, Brooklyn. There's a THS at the end. Do you see that? Like that tells you that that's behind the decimal place. Have you guys talked about the decimal behind the decimal, or the place values behind the decimal before, pretty much? Good. Okay, great. So let's make sure we get some of this written down. So let me show you what I want you to write down in your notebook. What I want you to write down is I want you to write down something that looks like this. Okay? So this would be like the ones, your decimal, and then I want you to actually write down the place value so you can look back in December or January and see the decimal places. So this would be the tenths, this would be the hundredths, don't forget the TH, this is the thousands, it's around another room, but that's okay. So make sure you know some of these place values, because if you don't know the place values, you can't round. I mean, that's all there is to it. If you don't know what the place values names are, you can't round. Now, some teachers, when you write a decimal, so let's say I'm going to write a decimal. Some teachers require you to put a 0 in front of that decimal. I'm not one of those teachers. Okay, so if you have that decimal, I don't require you to write a 0 in front. If you're used to that, fine, you can write a 0 in front. It doesn't change the value. It just changes the look a little bit. So if you don't want to write the 0 in front, you don't need to write the 0 in front. Any questions so far? So is everybody somewhat familiar with this? Okay, let's go to the next page. Now, let's talk about how to say decimals. Before we round, we have to talk about how to say them, because we don't know, sometimes we don't know how to say them. Like, a lot of us would say 0.97. Who would say 0.97 right off the bat? Okay, but there's actually a really legit way to say these. So does anybody know how you would say these in the correct term? How would you say this in the correct term, Aiden? 97 hundredths. Very good. That's right, 97 hundredths. And the way to know how to say this is to say, okay, what place value is my last number in? It's in the hundredths place. That's how you know what place value to use at the end. 97 hundredths. Nice job. How would I say this one? How would I say this one, Henry? 5/10. Nice work. How would I say this one? 172 thousandths. You know what place value to use at the end, so that's what the last number falls in. What about this one? What do you got, Alex? 401 thousandths. Nice job. What about one like this? How would you say this one? Don't think too hard. How would you say this one, Ella? 700. Okay. Is everybody familiar with how to say these? Okay. If we don't know the place value, like I said, we can't round. Nice job. All right, so let's talk about rounding. This is tricky. A lot of times when they want you to round to something, they'll tell you in two ways. They'll say, okay, round to the underlying number, okay, or they'll say round to the tenths place, round to the hundredths place, round to the thousandth. Right now, we're just going to do the underlying number, okay? One thing you have to remember, and maybe you should write this down, is this. 5 and above, give it a shove, okay? That's like my thing that I say. If it's 5 and above, you give it a shove. That's how I know what to do. 5 and above, give it a shove. Then I have 4 and below, leave it alone, but I'm assuming you can remember. Just 5 and above, give it a shove. Now, I think the biggest misunderstanding of when people round is that they look at that number, and that's the number they have to deal with. Well, that's not true. What number do you really have to look at to round correctly? Like, if I'm going to round to this place value, what number do I have to look at to round this correctly? What number? Brooklyn. I have to look at the 2. So anytime that I want to round to this place, I actually have to look at the next place. That's the biggest misconception of rounding. Like, they forget I have to look at the next number, but it tells me to round to this place value. No, it's always the next number. So let's say, all right, we're going to look at the 2. We're rounding to this place. Is this 5 and above? No. So what am I going to do to the 7? I'm going to keep it. So this is what my number would be. The end. That's my answer to this. Okay? And notice when it asks me to round to the hundredths, that's what number my answer stops at. Does this look familiar to anybody? Somewhat? Okay, let's go to this one. I'm going to round to what place value is this? Not the A, but what's the place value called? What's that place value called? Yes, Elena. The tenth. So what number am I going to look at? That's 6. Is that 5 and above? Yes. So what am I going to do to that 8? Shove it to a 9, right? A 5 and above, give it a shove. So I'm going to shove that 8 to a 9. So this would be my answer. Okay. If you want to write some of these down in your notebook, you're more than welcome to do that. I'm seeing some people scribbling it down so they know what to do. If you want to write down a few in your notebook, and I'm going to give you a few more to do also. So if you miss these, that's okay. All right, so let's look at this one. What place value am I rounding to? Not the 2. I want to know the 2. What place value is that 2 in? Everybody's got it. Notebook. Paisley. It's in the tenths. So I'm going to look at this one. Guess what? 5 and above. So what am I going to do to that 2? Give it a shove. So my answer looks like this. Nice job. Okay. Do I still need this slide yet? I'll leave it if you need it. Alright, so my next slide, I have 4 different ones, and I want you to do these yourself. So like in your notebook, you would probably write this, and then maybe do an arrow and write what the answer would be. Does that make sense? Okay. So do these 4 in your notebook for yourself. Just some practice for you. If you don't get them right, it's okay. It's just practice right now. That's why we're here.
want you to actually round them. Okay? Make sure you actually round them for me. So tell me what if they were rounded, like the first answer. If you aren't sure. I would look at this one. Is this 5 and above? No. So I'm going to keep the 0. So my first one, I would take this or this. They're the same thing. So that should be your first answer. Okay? Just get them all rounded. Another good rule of thumb is that, okay, if my answer's right, then whatever my line is under, that's how many, the space my number should end on, too. That's another good thing to think about if you're not sure. Does anybody need a little more time? Because if you do, you gotta tell me, because I'll give you all the time in the world if you need it. So you just gotta tell me. Okay, if you're ready, let's talk about them. So, 3, I'm running to the 10 spot, so what number am I gonna look at? 7. Is it 5 and above? So what am I gonna do to that 3? Give it a shove. That should be your answer for the second one. Okay. This was a little tricky. This one's a little trickier. So, I'm going to look at the 9, 5 and above, right? So what am I going to do to that 1? Make it a... That should be my answer. Okay. Let's talk about this one. 10's place. Look at the 6. So 3 changes to a 4. So 8, 9, 89.4 should be your answer. Okay. How we doing? So far, so good? Okay, I'm going to do one more example for you, because this is super tricky. I wrote it down somewhere, but I can't remember. But I'll make it up myself. Let's pretend this is your next one. Oh, I'm going to round to this one, I guess. I made my thing already. 70, I would write this one in your notebook, because this is one you're going to see in your practice homework today, okay? 79.6. I'm going to round to the nearest 1, the nearest unit or the nearest whole. So, I'm going to look at the 6, right? What's it tell me to do? What's that 6 tell me to do to that 9? Shove it up, right? But what does a 9 become then? 0. But if the 9 becomes a 0, what happens to that 7? What's going to happen, Aiden? It changes to an 8. You are exactly right. So sometimes you can get it so you change the few numbers in your problem. Most of the time it only changes 1. Okay? But sometimes it will change 2, depending on what you're rounding to. So, like, let me explain that again. This was a 6, so I'm going to have to shove my 9, but my 9 goes to a 0. If I change that to a 0, this one also gets shoved. Okay? Because if I didn't shove that 7, it'd be 70. Is 70 close to 79? I mean, it is, but not in rounding terms. Okay? Alright, so what questions do we have for me? Anybody? So far? Okay, we're going to play a little game quick. Are you ready? Stop. Alright, so your job in your notebook is to make 4 spaces like this. Your job is to make 4 spaces like this. And we're going to play this a few times, so you can make 4 spaces. You can make a few different sets of them. That's alright. So I'm going to pick 4 cards, actually. It says 5, but I'm going to start with 4. And in these 4 cards, you get to decide where you put the number. Okay? The goal is to create the biggest decimal. Okay? I'm going to pick 4 numbers. I have A's through 10 in here. My 10's a 0. So as soon as I pick a number, so let's say I pick a number 8. If I want the biggest decimal, where would you probably put it in your spaces? The biggest decimal. Probably the beginning, right? like something point. Are you catching what I'm throwing a little bit? You want the biggest decimal. We'll just practice first. Okay? So as soon as I flip a card, you decide where you want it in your space, and then you put it in your space. Okay? So we're going to make a decimal first, and then we're going to do some rounding with it. Okay? So my first number is a 4. Where are you going to put it? See if we can figure out how to make the biggest decimal. Okay? My next one, a 2. Where are you going to make the biggest? How are you going to make the biggest decimal? My next one is a 6. My last number is a 7. So the biggest decimal you could have on your paper was 7.642. Did anybody have that? 7.642. Nice job. Okay, are you seeing how this game is played? You're trying to figure out how you can make the biggest one. All right, so if I have 7.642, round this to the nearest tenth space for me. Round this to the nearest tenth space. If you want to underline the tenths for yourself, sometimes people do that. If I say the tenth space, you say, okay, I'm rounding to here. Now I have to look at the next one. If I'm going to round to the nearest tenths, what would my answer be? Dylan. 7.6. Nice job. All right, how we doing? So far, so good. If you have questions, you got to tell me. Okay? Don't be afraid to ask. All right, let's play again. Make another 4 spaces. Let's see if we can do it again. Okay. All right, here we go. 4 cards. Biggest decimal. 8. Next card. 1. Two. This is a 9. It would screw almost everybody up. 5. Wow, that was easy. So 8, 5, 2, 1. Is that what everybody had for the most part? Who had 8, 5, 2 on? Raise your hand. 8, 5, 2, 1. Some maybe took a chance and didn't put the 8 there. They're hoping for a 9. I don't know. Okay, so let's say 8, 5, 2, 1 was your decimal. 8, 5, 2, 1. Round to the nearest ones. Round to the nearest ones. What would the nearest ones be? Somebody I haven't heard from today. What's my nearest one? Anybody? I heard from you already. Somebody I haven't heard from. My nearest one. Oh, don't be scared. Okay, so what's in the 1 spot? 8. So what number do I got to look at? The 5. It's 5 and above, right? So what's my answer going to be, Henry? 9. Nice job. Nice work. All right, let's do another one. This time, though, I'm going to pick 5 cards, and you get to leave one out. Okay, so like if I pick a 0 or a 1 or 2 or a low number, you can leave it out. So I'll pick 5 cards this time. All right, here we go. 1. Ooh, we're going to leave it out. We're going to keep it in. You might have 0. I don't know. It's up to you. 7. 9. Ha! 2 more cards. 2. Last but not least, 5. So you could have 9. The highest you could have 9, 7, 5, 2. Anybody have that? 9, 7, 5, 2. 9.752. Nice job. Okay, that's yours. 9, 7, 5, 2. Round to the nearest tenths again. Round to the nearest tenths. The nearest tenth. So the tenth is what? 7. So what number am I looking at? Haley? 5. So what's going to happen to that 7? Thanks,
So 9.8 should be your answer if you're on to the nearest tens. How we doing? Is it coming back? Like a little bit at a time? All right, let's do one more. Let's do the lowest decimal now. See if you can make the smallest decimal. Okay? Smallest decimal. 5 cards, you want the smallest one this time. First card, 0. You want the smallest, we're not going for the highest. 3. That's a tricky one. I already put 3. 6. 4. Last card. 5. So your smallest decimal could have been 0, 3, 4, 5, right? 0, 3, 4, 5 could have been your lowest. Does anybody get that? 0, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so round to the nearest. So if this is your answer, this is the decimal we're looking for. 0, 3, 4, 5. Round to the nearest hundredth this time. Round to the nearest hundredth this time. So what number are we going to look at if we're rounding to the nearest hundredth? What number? Yes, sir, Alex? 5. So that's going to make my 4 a 5. So my answer should be 0.35. What questions do you have for me? Anything?